Second reading of the Clean Air Human Rights Bill. Baroness Jones of Milscombe.
My Lords, I'm not going to lie to you, nor am I going to be modest. This is an absolutely brilliant bill. And I think that the government will be very wise to accept it in its entirety, exactly as it is. Now, I've worked to reduce air pollution for over 20 years. When I was on the London Assembly, I was on it for 16 years, during which time I pressed both mayors, Ken Livingstone for 8 years and the current Prime Minister for a further 8 years. Now, Ken Livingstone actually did take action with the introduction of the low emission zone. And I also pressed Boris Johnson for action, and he did with pot plants lining busy roads and an attempt to spray the roads near monitoring stations with a type of glue that would bind the pollution to the road surface and so it wouldn't be measured. Now, to be fair, he did come up with the idea of the ultra-low emission zone, and it was so brilliant an idea that he left the next mayor to do it. And I don't want to kick a man when he's down, but basically, he has behaved no differently to most others on this issue. I've witnessed politicians of all parties fail to deal with this public health emergency when in government. So year after year, for the past 2 decades, I've seen the same press statements from DEFRA playing down the problem and stating that it's just about solved. And year after year, I've witnessed the government hiding information about bad air days and air pollution episodes because it might scare the public into demanding action. The result has been an invisible killer being allowed to take victims while government sits by and ministers lose 3 consecutive court cases over their failure to have a decent plan. Now, Ella Roberta Adu-Kissi-Debrah was one of those victims. She was 9 years old and regularly travelled along the polluted South Circular Road. This bill is named in her honour after her mother's amazing fight to get air pollution as a medical cause of death on Ella's death certificate. And her mother, Rosamond Kissi-Debrah, is here with us today, listening to our arguments, to our debate. Ella is the first person in this country to have that recognised, and the fact that it took a hard-working team of lawyers and an incredibly brave mother to show that this was the case speaks volumes about the official silence regarding the impacts of air pollution. The most that Ella's mother, Rosamond, might have heard about air pollution from the government was the one official warning a year around springtime. No matter how many times air pollution went over the official limits, the government issued just one press statement a year. In fact, they even stopped doing that after the 2011 press release coincided with a major air pollution event and made it onto the pages of all the national newspapers. It would be many years before the new London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, started putting pollution alerts on bus stops and other TfL outlets. So it was left to Rosamond's team to dig up the information and prove that air pollution caused and worsened Ella's asthma and was a medical cause of her tragic death. My view is that warning people about air pollution and acting to keep everyone, and particularly the vulnerable, safe is exactly what governments should be doing. The health of the people should be their primary aim. And they're not, and no government since the 1950s has taken it seriously. And that's why this legislation to make clean air a human right is so essential. This bill would enshrine the human right to clean air precisely and explicitly in UK law. It would also require the Secretary of State to assess air pollution in England and Wales and publish and report detailed information about it, including warnings when needed. If you are in any doubt about the seriousness of the issues I'm raising, please spend a few minutes today talking to Rosamond, who is prepared to meet any and all of you, and she will explain exactly what happened to her daughter and why it's so important that this bill passes. Now, importantly, the UN Human Rights Council adopted a resolution on the 8th of October 2021 that acknowledged the importance of a clean, healthy and sustainable environment as critical to the enjoyment of all human rights. The UK government voted in favour of that resolution, and as I hope they will again when it comes before the UN General Assembly later this month for adoption globally. In order to ensure independent scrutiny and continuous improvement, this bill establishes a Citizens' Commission for Clean Air, which would review annually the Secretary of State's compliance with this bill during the previous calendar year and advise the Secretary of State if any methods should be improved from the start of the subsequent year. Importantly, this bill deals with indoor pollution in new developments, the underground, and buildings regularly accessed by members of the public, including children. Crucially, this bill updates the government's targets by basing them on the best international advice, including World Health Organization's latest air quality guidelines. It would also push the government and public authorities to act on the Climate Change Committee's advice. Another big innovation in my bill is that it follows a one-air approach that encompasses the health and environmental impacts of air pollutants and greenhouse gases. Now, I can understand the government's reluctance to spend money or impose regulations, but the costs of dealing with this public health emergency are very similar to the costs of solving the climate crisis, because it is the same crisis and both are heading towards a zero-emission solution. In fact, my bill offers the quickest, cheapest and most effective way to transformative action to address the UK's largest environmental health risk. Overnight, public authorities would simply have to consider air pollution, including greenhouse gases, in every decision in a way that equalities are currently considered. Some public authorities are beginning to do something similar when they apply a climate lens when taking decisions, but it won't be enough without this bill. I've seen the medical evidence accumulate regarding the benefits to our health and the NHS finances of taking action on air pollution. The link with long-term conditions such as heart conditions, lung damage, organ failure and Alzheimer's. The more the scientists look, the more dangers they find from polluted air. These cost the NHS money and bring tragedy to families. But if the government takes action on emissions, then it not only saves lives, we also help save the planet, which is why this green agenda makes so much sense. The Environment Agency and Committee on Climate Change would be required to review the pollutants and limits annually and advise the Secretary of State if they need tightening. The standards may only be tightened, not loosened. This legislation has a vision of a cleaner future and a modern approach on how we achieve that. It would support continuous improvement on an annual basis. This bill requires new regulations to enable the sale of appliances generating wholly renewable energy and enables energy efficiency improvements that reduce energy use and emissions of greenhouse gases. Part of this approach is to restrict the sale of combustion appliances that emit pollutants to the air, including wood-burning stoves. And if this bill becomes law, I will happily get rid of my partner's wood-burning stove. In passing, I would like to thank the Delegated Powers and Regulatory Reform Committee for scrutinising my bill and confirm that I'm willing to propose amendments to the bill to address their 3 recommendations. In essence, these amendments would align parts of the bill relating to the tightening of future standards more closely to mechanisms in the Climate Change Act 2008, which require the Secretary of State to comply or explain to Parliament. A lot of the responsibility for current clean air action falls to mayors and public authorities, yet they don't have the powers and resources to match that responsibility. This bill seeks to change that by giving duties and matching powers and resources to national and local authorities, including metro mayors, to achieve clean air within 5 years, with annual reviews thereafter. Finally, my bill also has teeth. Where the Secretary of State or others have not achieved clean air by this deadline, nor otherwise complied with their duties under this bill, the Citizens Commission for Clean Air may issue a notice requiring them to comply with their duty, take specific steps in order to achieve compliance, and provide written information of the steps taken or proposed to be taken for the purpose of complying with their duty. This Citizens Commission for Clean Air is a new organisation set up to support people like Rosamond by helping them to get justice via the courts. The Citizens Commission for Clean Air may apply to the court for an order requiring the Minister to comply. This bill would also allow them to institute or intervene in legal proceedings if they are relevant to the duty to achieve clean air. And so my bill therefore proposes a practical and proportionate approach to enforcement. All this is underpinned by fundamental environmental principles that must be followed. And so, my Lords, I give you a bill that's detailed and comprehensive, but above all, it's necessary. So please, if we could pass this bill, called Ella's Law, before the 70th anniversary of the Great Smog in December this year, and the 10th anniversary of Ella's death on the 15th of February 2023, I think that the country would thank us. It's too late to save Ella, but I hope this bill will honour her memory.